Amanda's story. I27F need confirmation that he's 29M been unfaithful. It's Sunday morning and my husband has just left to go help his brother fix a bike, but I'm left wondering what he does anymore. There was nothing unusual in how he acted this morning. He let me sleep in a bit while he made breakfast. I couldn't bring myself to walk down to the kitchen in my usual t-shirt and panties. I put a full cotton pajama set on because I'm struggling with what to think. He noticed that I was aloof and standoffish right away. I usually thank him with a hug and kiss but couldn't bring myself to touch him or even look at him for that matter. He asked me if I was okay and all I could muster is, I'm fine, just feeling a bit icky. I couldn't eat and the coffee quickly turned my gut upside down. I apologized to him for not staying but said that I needed to rest and went to our bathroom. I stayed there until he had to leave. He yelled, "Goodbye, get better," through the door before he left. It all started yesterday when we went dirt biking in the mountains. We like to get out at least once a month and it's getting late in the fall now. Pretty soon we'll be switching over to snowmobiles. We had a group of 6. My husband Ian, his longtime friend Leah 30F, her man Rob 32M, my friend and client Carrie 27F and her husband Will 27M. Ian and Leah would be considered expert riders. They both grew up near the mountains and have biked, hiked, ran, skied and snowmobiled them all their lives. I've been riding for the past 3 years since I started dating Ian. We've been married just over a year now. Rob, Carrie, and Will have all just started this past summer. All 3 of them are athletic and brave enough to enjoy riding, but I do find myself split between the 2 groups often. Yesterday I'd decided to keep up with the thrill seekers and leave the noobs behind. I was so proud of myself when I did it. I've learned to control my bike. When to hit the gas and when to lay off. How to recognize a good line to take versus a dangerous one. How to avoid shale and stand or lean when necessary. I truly held my own and both Ian and Leah were very impressed. I even was able to help Leah get dusted off and back up out of a rock gorge that she failed to avoid. I could see the surprise in her eyes when I pulled her up. I don't think she ever realized how strong I am. I was a swimmer in college. I even tried out for our country's Olympic team and finished 6th. Just a bit outside of being asked to continue training with them as an alternate. I've always been very fit and I take pride in how strong I am for my size. I'm all woman though. All of my gear and my bike are pink. I bought them when we started, and I've always loved my choice. Leah didn't though. She would always tease me about being too girly for the mountains and would get downright mad if my bike had issues. Calling it a pink piece of shit. It wasn't yesterday though. I held my own and she knew it. We always gather at someone's house when we're done the day and after we drop our equipment off. Last night we were at Leah and Rob's. They have a small house but a big fire pit in their backyard. It's probably the last night of the year for that as well. We did our usual talk about the day, sharing war stories and showing off bruises. Will had a good fall that will leave quite the bruise on his hip. I got to brag about pulling Leah up and helping her get her bike out of the gorge. Leah got pretty messed up and was trying to brag about climbs she had done in the past that I couldn't do at the time. No one gave her much airtime though. She was starting to get emotional the more inebriated she got, sitting in her lawn chair, staring at me and crying a bit. It was weird behavior for her. We shut it down around midnight and Rob had to guide Leah into the house because she was struggling to keep her balance. I say all of the above to give what I view as the context for the text Leah sent at 3 a.m. that I read this morning. It said, "I'm so sorry what we've been doing, Amanda. I hope someday you can forgive me." I think it's obvious how I'm interpreting this text, but there is a small hope that it could be just referring to her disdain of my writing ability up to now. I'm looking for some thoughts on how to proceed and I'll answer questions in an update. Thank you for your time and advice. Update 1. I'm spiraling, and I don't know what to do. I sent Leah a simple text WDYM. Of course, it's still unread and there hasn't been a response. Thank you to those of you that have commented that this could be as simple as a drunken stupid text. It hit me so hard this morning that I didn't consider the possibility. The longer she leaves me hanging though, the worse I feel about it. My husband, Ian, called me to check in. He wanted to know how I was feeling. I told him I was feeling better. He asked if I wanted him to come home early, but there was still some work to do. I said that I was fine. I usually head to the shop on Sundays to join him, so this is a little different from our usual routine. He and his brother had inherited the shop 4 years ago when his dad passed away due to COVID. It's known throughout our area as the best place to get your mountain and lake toys fixed up. They do everything from repairs of boats, dirt bikes, ATVs, and snowmobiles to aftermarket improvements. They even buy and sell used vehicles when it makes sense. I'm a CPA and I usually get the books up to date on Sundays. It's the only real time that I have to keep them up to date. I work in the city for a large public accounting firm. Between the demands of the job and the daily commute, I'm gone about 60 to 70 hours during the week. The shop is just as busy, and Ian works about the same hours, so we don't really have times when either of us is working while the other isn't. Friday nights and Saturdays are our days together. We go for dinner, we go hiking, skiing, biking or sledding. We just go for adventures and enjoy our time with each other. I say all this just to state that I don't know how he would have time to cheat on me. But my gut is telling me that something is up. Why would she apologize for something we've done? She's the only one that has been bullying me. Why would she need forgiveness? I called my friend Carrie to just ask if she felt Leah was acting weird last night. She agreed that Leah was acting like she was struggling about saying something. I like Carrie. But she isn't close enough to me that I would confide a worry like this with. She is a client that owns a high-end antique shop that she inherited from her grandparents around the same time as Ian and his brother took over the shop. I like her. But I don't know if she's a trustworthy, empathetic person. I have access to all of Ian's social media accounts. I pretty much manage them for the shop. There's nothing there and no indication that he has some hidden account. He's not big into that type of stuff, so I didn't expect to find anything when I looked. We have always shared locations, and I've never noticed day trips to Leah's or anything weird like that. The only person that I would trust my concerns with this is my mom. I'm thinking of heading into the city later this afternoon to give her a visit. She lives near downtown, and I do go in from time to time on a Sunday evening to visit her, stay overnight and then work the next day before coming home. If anyone has any ideas on how I can find out if he's cheating, please help. Update. I called Leah and there was no answer. I didn't leave a message because I didn't trust myself to not freak out. I then called Ian and let him know that I was going into town to visit my mom because she wanted to see me and it's been a month. He said that they were working out the winter parts orders so his brother and he will be working later today anyways. We both said I love you when we ended the call but it just feels dirty right now. Amanda's story update 2. My rock and the mountain girl crapping on my marriage. I'm writing this late Sunday night because I can't get to sleep. I had my first seizure when I was 4. My mother has described it as the scariest moment of her life. Thankfully it happened in the living room, and I fell onto soft carpet. Her and my father rushed me to the hospital. I was diagnosed with epilepsy soon after. My mother raised me alone since I was 6. I've always assumed that my father couldn't handle the fact that he spawned an imperfect daughter. He ran off with some younger floozy and never looked back to check on us. I have a vague recollection of what he looks like, but I always picture one of those bearded movie villains with sharp features. To this day, a man with a beard gives me the ick. I've been able to manage my condition with medication, breathing exercises, and pure free will. It has been a decade since I've had a major seizure. I do have minor seizures every once in a while. I can feel them coming and control my body so that you'd never know it was happening while looking at me, other than maybe a bit of a blank stare. Internally though, I'm fighting to hold my body still while trying to find a breath of air. My mother helped me in every way to become the person I am today. She held me tight and comforted me when I had embarrassing incidents. She helped me to control my nutrition balances when the seizure meds made me feel like I was starving. She got me counseling to help me understand myself and my environment. She encouraged me to view myself as a strong independent woman that isn't defined by my medical diagnosis. I see her as supermom, and I always strive to make her proud. She had supper ready for me when I arrived. She has a small 2-bedroom apartment downtown that is within walking distance of my office. She has worked for a property management company for 20 years and is well respected in Indiana the city. It didn't take us long to get to the main topic of Ian's possible infidelity. I could tell that she was surprised by the text, but she focused a bit more on Ian and Leah's relationship history. I realized that I haven't really written about it until now, so here it goes. The best way to describe Leah is that she's a ski bunny and mountain girl. Just picture the ski bunny that you always see on advertisements and TV. Blonde hair, blue eyes, hair flowing to her shoulders under a cap. She's about 5'6" and built like a UFC fighter. Solid, athletic, not a lot of curves though. Leah and Ian grew up together. We live about an hour away from a major mountain tourist destination. Lakes, ski hills, golf courses, hotels, fancy shops, and restaurants. All of it, like lifestyles of the rich and famous shit. Leah's family had a small ranch just on the outskirts of the national park. They were frequent customers at Ian's family repair shop and so the families knew each other. Leah and Ian went to school together in the same grade and started hanging out on weekends together. Her family would come to drop off or pick up equipment and Leah and Ian would head out riding little dirt bikes or ATVs in the nearby hills. Ian's family would go camping and the two of them would hike and ride together. Leah didn't have an easy childhood. Her mom passed away when she was young, and her dad and brother struggled with raising a girl. Ian's mom kind of took her under her wing and helped when she could. When Leah was 14, she ran away from her dad and brother. It was then that she moved in with Ian's family for good. I'm pretty sure people can come to their own conclusion on why. It's not my place to say. From that point on, Ian and Leah were like twins. They did everything together until she turned 18 and moved out. She took a job at a major resort doing groundskeeping, ski patrol, maintenance, and even search and rescue. She lived in the employee residence on site, and Ian would visit on weekends to ski or hike the area while partying and being near the rich and famous. They both have stories of attending these extravagant parties or events. They've both had many ons where they wake up in some ritzy suite at some fancy hotel, and then do the walk of shame in the early morning to the hotel employee residence. I've asked them both directly if they ever hooked up, and they've both squinched their nose and stated that they view each other as brother-sister and that would never happen. I've always seen that as BS though. Two young, good-looking people with such similar interests sleeping in the same room while intoxicated. Something had to have happened, even if it was just to find out, right? I've always trusted that nothing was happening during my relationship with Ian because they both are very loyal people. At least I did trust them until getting that FN text. My mom agrees with me that it is all pretty damning at the moment. I'll spend the day tomorrow trying to contact Leah and see if she'll come clean through her guilt. If not, then I'll need to decide if this is enough to confront Ian directly when I get home or continue some sort of audit on their relationship. As always, any thoughts or advice are appreciated. I wouldn't be posting if you weren't helping me sort through this pile of crap. Amanda's story update 3 reminiscing, and I now know when and how. I've always enjoyed the walk from my mom's place to my office. The city always feels so alive in the morning. Noise, people, activity everywhere. There's a really cute coffee shop on the corner along the way that I always stop at. The barista is always so friendly and quick. It's such a contrast to the calming hum of the mountains that I can't help but get excited. I needed that this morning because I was running on only 3 hours of sleep. I found myself thinking about Ian and our relationship. We met at a dance club not too far from where I was walking. I'd been out of a previous relationship for about 6 months when a group of co-workers decided to go out on the town on a Friday night. I and a couple other ladies were dancing away when I noticed this guy that looked like Hayden Christensen just staring at me. I kept glancing over and it was clear that he wasn't taking his eyes off of me. NGL, it turned me on. He stopped me as I was leaving the dance floor, but it was far too loud to hear each other. We tried to chat in a back corner, but it didn't take long before we decided to leave and find a quiet diner where we could eat and chat. He had some hilarious stories from his escapades that gave me belly laughs. We really started connecting when he started describing his difficulties in running the shop though. Back then I was so full of new professional energy that I couldn't keep myself from talking about how to properly account for and manage his business. He listened attentively to every word. I think he even pretended to take notes. It made me feel special. I'm not into answers. Seizure meds and alcohol don't ever mix, so I don't drink and, therefore, have never had that boost of inhibition. I've always been cautious about relationships, but I was pretty hooked by this guy from the start. He walked me to my mom's building, we shared our contact information and had an impressive make-out session before I went up to bed, and he went on his way. He called me the next morning and asked if I'd join him for breakfast. We continued our conversations like there was no pause at all. He talked me into driving out to his shop, and then we went on a mountain hike to a lake where we had a little picnic in a place that you would have thought no one had been before. I drove home that evening feeling the warmth of love. We were an official couple 2 weeks later. I started spending weekends at his place after a month. I moved in with him when we got engaged after about a year. We got married in a small ceremony on Labor Day last year. During the whole time we've been together, I've been an integral part of the business. The shop, as a business, was a disaster when I first started dating Ian. I haven't mentioned it before, but Ian's mom passed away from cancer right around the time when Leah moved out. Ian's dad kind of fell apart from that point on, and the shop suffered. Ian was 25 when he and his brother inherited it. They had pretty much taken over all the work part in the previous couple of years, so that wasn't a problem. It was the business part that they had no clue how to handle. I don't think the shop would have lasted another 6 months if I hadn't shown up to help. It's always been a cash business. A customer drops off their toy and they don't get to pick it back up unless they pay cash for the parts and services. The problem was that their dad had stopped worrying about getting work orders properly filled out. He was just billing customers by memory by the time just before he passed. It created a mess for the brothers to deal with. Our first major change was ensuring that every job was properly tracked. The boys started writing down the parts that were used and the time it took to fix a unit. We also tacked on a little surcharge for the oil, nuts, and polish that would always accompany any job. That became their first step of returning the shop to being a business. We also worked on getting them some proper banking arrangements. An operating line of credit that was supported by their land and building gave us some real time to make meaningful changes to the business operations. The bank did require an audit though. We found a local firm willing to do the audit at a very reasonable rate because of my credentials as the controller of the business. I was so proud when we made that deal. As many of you have probably thought, the boys starting to charge the real amount for their work rather than their dad's guesstimate, did start to concern customers. They had a pretty long period of some pretty sweet deals and were starting to blame the boys for taking advantage of them. It wasn't the case, but customer perception is their reality. The coup de grace, as they say, was when we changed our parts supplier. The family had been using a wholesaler in the city for all their parts. They would look at a machine, figure out the parts needed, then see if the wholesaler had them. The price for the parts wasn't horrible, but the shipping was killing them. They'd either have the parts sent by Purolator or UPS and pay the fee, or one of the brothers would drive to and from the city. Ian was on one of those runs when we met. He was late getting to the warehouse and needed to stay overnight to pick up the parts. The shop's markup was 10 on parts. Basically they would charge $110 for a part that cost them $100. This is somewhat standard to their industry because they make their money on service. The problem was that their costs to get the parts to the shop was not only destroying that 10 markup but also cutting into their service profit. Add the fact that Dad was forgetting parts in their billing and the business was doomed to fail. I've mentioned that we are considered to be the best shop in our area. We didn't realize how significant our volume of parts orders was until we started to talk directly with manufacturers. It's in the volume of orders and the grouping of them that save you money. I was able to create listing of parts that are used every season, no matter how the season goes, barring disaster of course. We then had the information of how we could order in bulk, basically fill a shipping container and significantly reduce shipping costs. After that we contracted the manufacturer directly to fill these orders. At the end of the day, with volume discounts, it saved us about $35 on parts costs. We transferred 20 of those savings to our customers, and that is what ended their concerns about the boys possibly price gauging. I don't think that the shop has had a bad month since we made that happen. It was a lot of work though. Carrie actually helped during the process because she had some import connections. She and I clicked, and our friendship-client relationship started. I remember that Ian had to spend 2 weeks in Mexico to get the deals signed. I say all of this because I find myself thinking of potential divorce. I've been useless all morning and I'm writing this during my lunch break. No, I'm not just thinking about money. I'm a kick-ass professional. And I'll be fine regardless of what happens. I'm hurt though, and I'm thinking about how I can make him pay. I believe that the above affirms that I've been a big part of the shop's success, and, even though I'm not an owner, I feel that I'm due for some respect for how I've helped. I'm feeling this way because I've realized how the two lovebirds have been executing their shenanigans. It makes me sick to think about it, tbh. They pretty much organized their monthly rendezvous right under my eyes. I've said that we would do these monthly mountain adventures where we would take our dirt bikes or snowmobiles up to remote mountain locations. It was originally Ian's idea to create connections with customers and encourage the use of the vehicles we fixed. I thought it was a great idea. What I didn't say was that Leah and Ian would always set the destination, and it was usually unattainable for us non-experts. They would always charge ahead, leaving me in a quasi-no man's land between them and the noobs. The start was always slow, and they made sure that we knew proper safety and vehicle care. Inevitably they'd get bored though and charge ahead to the destination. That left me to putter along with the lower crew and make sure everyone was having fun. They'd generally be apart from us for an hour or two, but they always returned to help the group set up lunch. The decision would be made to then go further up or start returning. They were always present and helpful during descent, as that is the most dangerous part. They clearly had the time to go have their fun. It makes so much more sense when I think of this past Saturday. The little gorge that caught Leah wasn't so dangerous that falling in would cause major injury. It was just, well, delaying, and would get you stuck if you didn't have help getting out. I was behind her, and I couldn't figure out why she was taking the line so close to it. There were plenty of safer lines than the one she chose. Ian was over a ridge, so he didn't see what happened. She tried to power through the line, but didn't make it, and the back end of her bike fell down and dragged her in. I now understand that she meant me to be the one to fall in while she zipped over the ridge. She could have then had her fun with Ian, and they would eventually save me on their return. It's clear that her failure and my ability to help her out just triggered the guilty response she had. I tried to call her a few times this morning and even sent her a "please respond to me" text. I ended up calling Rob, her man. He's an event coordinator at the resort she works at, so he almost always answers his phone. He said that Leah had a planned vacation this week and even he couldn't contact her. She'll be back this Sunday. My only thought, and yet I'm a witch, is that she's aborting her affair baby right now. I'm heading home after work today and I plan on confronting my coward of a husband. I'll give everyone an update after it happens. As always, thanks for your advice and support. Amanda's story update for confronting a coward. I've seen copies of the very first tests for professional accountants. They were always some form of the same thing. Columns and rows of numbers that needed to be added and cross-added. If the total of the row additions matched the total of the column additions, then you were in balance and passed the test, assuming your math was right, of course. Back then the budding professionals were given a couple of hours to get the task done, no calculators of course. Today that same test would take less than 30 seconds to complete. Just take a picture of the test, import it into a spreadsheet and voila. It always amazes me when people hear about my profession and their first comment is, "You must be good at math." That isn't anywhere near what an accountant does anymore. I've been in public practice 5 years now and what I do has nothing to do with math. In today's world, accounting is about financial information, compliance, communication, and negotiation. I have training in all of these elements. It was my negotiation skills that I needed the most in confronting Ian. I needed him to give me the truth, and I knew that he would resist that. I went into the discussion with a plan and a couple of backup plans, but when all was said and done, I failed. Here's how it all went down. I left work early. It was a wasted day anyways. I had 1 billable hour on my timesheet when it's usually 7:10. I'm sure it will be noticed. I should have just taken a sick day, but it is what it is. I left at 4:30 with plans to be home around 5:30. I'd told Ian that I would be home around my usual time of 7. I wanted time to pack some things just in case he fessed up, but, being honest, a sad part of me just wanted to walk in the house and catch the two of them in the act. Ridiculous, I know, given that we share locations. But maybe he just leaves his phone at the shop when he's banging Leah in my bed. I used the hour commute to focus on ways to stay positive in our conversation. It's one of the key ways to keep your opponent engaged. Negative energy just spirals, and then no one wins. My last couple of days proves that. I know that this is always easier when you have no skin in the game, but today all of my skin was in this game, and it hurt like hell. I focused myself and practiced my questions in my mind. I needed him to open up and be honest with me. There was no one in the house when I got there. Thankfully. I brought a couple of large suitcases from my mom's house, and I had a couple more there. I filled them all with my clothes and keepsakes. I considered taking a couple of pictures off the wall, but opted to leave them, so it didn't look so obvious when he came in. I loaded it all into my car trunk, and then waited for him. I did take a bit of time to make sure that I didn't look or smell like the walking zombie that I felt inside. I met him at the door at 7:15 with a big hug and meaningful kiss. I knew it might be our last, so I savored the moment. Partially because I wanted to get him in the right mood, and partially because I needed some positive energy for our discussion. I counted on him bringing some food and drink home with him, and he didn't disappoint me. We sat at the kitchen table, and he started the conversation by asking about my mom. I'd texted him earlier in the day that I was feeling fine, so the question made complete sense to me. I told him that she was doing well, looking healthy, and I thanked him for understanding my last-second visit. He said that he understood but missed me yesterday and last night. I thanked him for that and knew that it was time to start our real conversation. I started with a simple, lead-in, question of, "Have you talked to Leah since Saturday night?" His response was simple, quick, and lacked any noticeable body language cues. He said, "No, why would I?" It wasn't the response I wanted though, because responding with a question forces my hand. A simple no would have left me to continue controlling the conversation, but now I had to respond. I was ready for this though, and followed up with, "Didn't you see how drunk she was?" I was intently focused on his body language at that moment. His brow furrowed, but his eyes shifted to the left. There was no pupil dilation change. His demeanor then changed, and he said while laughing, "Yeah, I wonder if she's still hungover." Now I know that reading body language isn't some sort of polygraph or anything like that. It's a measure of the status and situation of the conversation. The words always matter more, the body language gives context. At this point his response gave me a tiny bit of hope. It was meaningful and natural. The brow furrow gave me a tiny bit of pause, but it could have been just a moment of me peering too hard into his actions. I did give him a laugh at his comment. I needed to keep the positive energy alive, and his comment deserved it. This is where the real setup needed to happen though. I said, while laughing, "Come on, we both know she's no lightweight. Actually, she might still be drunk. Rob told me that she's disappeared on vacation all week." Ian visibly jolted as soon as I said it. His reaction was exactly as I expected. Rob can only be described as a F-boy. For God's sake, he event plans for every rich little brat within 300 miles of our tourist resort. He organizes hot girls and boys to attend parties. He hires and fires hundreds of wannabes every year. He's connected with so many people that don't care or respect common morals. I've referred to him as Leah's man, but that relationship is sketchy at best. I've always viewed her relationship with him as one of convenience. She gets to live outside of the employee complex, and he gets access to her ability to connect with rich tourists. I knew that any reference to a direct conversation with Rob would send Ian into a tizzy. To be frank, I didn't care though. I needed him to ask the question. The question came immediately, and he had a hint of pain in his eyes when he asked it, "Why would you talk to Rob?" I was still quasi-laughing when he asked. His face was serious AF. And I knew that all of our positive energy had dissipated. I figured this would happen, but it was to an extent that I didn't anticipate. I tried to think through ways to get the energy restored in my planning, but I didn't think of any path that would lead to my next, necessary statement. I simply said, "Because she sent me a weird text about us and didn't respond to my questions about it." I didn't have to pretend or act about the hurt that I felt at that point. It was all real. I also knew that love and concern are a different sort of positive energy. I could see that he had both when he asked, "What text?" It would have been so easy to throw my phone in front of him with the message open and yell, "WTF?" That would have gained nothing though. I needed him to just tell me the truth. I calmly pulled up the message, looked him in the eye, and passed my phone to him. I was attuned to every part of his visible body as he read it. His reaction was once again, and unfortunately, exactly as I expected. He had the phone in his right hand, and immediately slouched while supporting his head, by his neck, with his left. His eyes went straight down, and he just looked, well, guilty. That's when I asked the obvious question that I've been stressing about for 30+ hours now, what do you think she meant, Ian? I've heard of DARVO but honestly never gave it much attention. It stands for deny, attack, reverse victim and offender. I'd dismissed it as something that professionals would never do. I truly didn't think about it in a relationship context until today. My bad. He looked up from his guilty position and said, "You don't think this is about me and her, do you?" I expected the question and quickly but calmly responded, "What else would she be talking about?" He looked at me in that moment and I could see that his eyes were darting from his left to his upper right. His pupils were growing larger, and his brow was getting furrowed. That's when he said, "Maybe she's talking about her and Rob? You've clearly been buddy with him." I had no idea he was capable of this sort of accusation. It was out of character, and I wasn't ready for it. It took me a hot sec, but I collected myself and calmly asked, "Why would I bring that shit to you?" He jolted immediately, clearly realizing how FD up his question was. He stood up and started ranting out possibilities. The one that caught my attention was maybe Leah and I were having an affair. And she'd been effing around on me. It actually became ridiculous. I remained calm for a few minutes of this bullshit, but I eventually just stood up and peacefully said, "Ian, please just tell me the truth." He couldn't stop himself though. It was like I wasn't in the room. I walked to the door and when it looked like he was about to grab me, I stared him in the eye and yelled, "Just admit you've been fucking Leah." He jolted back while staring straight back at me and I exited the house. I made it about 10 minutes before I had to pull off to the side of the road for a cry. It took me a couple hours to make the 1-hour drive to my mom's. She was prepared for this possibility, has been my rock, and I'm in an okay place to deal with this disaster. Ian's been constantly calling and texting about how sorry he is, how messed up the situation is, how loyal he is to me, how this is all a big misunderstanding. I'm thinking at this point, I'll never get the truth that I tried so hard for. My gas tank is empty. I'm about to take some major sleeping meds and try to let my body recover. I'll update about the aftermath tomorrow. Thank you all for your advice and support. Amanda's story update 5. I'm hurting and thinking about revenge. Have you ever been near a superstar? By near, I don't mean standing on the side of the road and waiting for the Queen or Taylor Swift to waltz on by waving and maybe touching your hand. I mean the chance to sit down, one-on-one, and just talk about anything for 12 to 24 hours. I did that last year, and I totally forgot, understandably, that it will happen again starting tomorrow. So yeah, yesterday was a disaster, wrapped in a hurricane shit sandwich. NGL, it feels like shit when your B-grade Luke Skywalker husband couldn't keep his lightsaber out of Ronda Rousey's ass on your watch. I deserve so much better than this bullshit. I think I'm going to rope in and ravage Superman to the point where Luke has no choice but to cry and call him daddy. That's my plan. In case you're wondering, Superman's name is Alan, and he's the youngest principal partner ever in our office, maybe even our firm. He transferred into our office right around when I started my professional journey with the firm and immediately generated a buzz. He was a hockey player and had a lot of NHL players as his clients. Thing is, he was doing such a good job that the agents started talking about him and all of a sudden, he had 300 clients across all 4 major sports. It wasn't all sports though. I'll guarantee that everyone reading this knows at least one of his top 5 band clients. His client presence has elevated our entire office to the point where we can just say the name of our firm and people respect us. It's truly amazing. A little more than 2 years ago he interviewed our staff for a manager that could help him handle his audit work. I was the youngest of about 25 candidates. He chose me. He said that it was because he knew how difficult it is to compete at a national level, and he was incredibly impressed that I did so while overcoming my disability. He stared me in the eyes and said that I'm the type of competitor that he wants to work with. Probably the proudest moment of my career so far. One of his clients is the largest trucking company in the Midwest. It's headquartered in a minor city that is about a 6-hour drive from us. He agreed to make client visits at least once a year and, given that I'm responsible for the audit of their financial statements, he took me there with him last year. I think I learned more about my role and the importance of my work in the time we drove together than I did in any full year of college. It's amazing to think that he's only 2 years older than me and younger than Ian. Auditing a company is a pretty straightforward gig. We start by discussing the systems and processes of the company and make a determination if they are reliable to produce proper financial information or not. Let's call this step 1. We then test the assertions made to us in step 1 by management in order to determine if the systems and processes are working. That's step 2. In a perfect world, we like everything that management asserts to us in step 1, and then step 2 confirms everything asserted to us from step 1. As everything in life, nothing is perfect though. If we have concerns about any systems or processes in step 1, then we do a lot more work in step 2 to see if the concern is valid. Where it really falls apart is when the management assertions from step 1 are proven to be false by step 2. I say this just to explain why Alan takes me on this adventure. He leaves it to me to take care of these steps while he focuses on business planning, compliance, and any potential mergers and acquisitions for the company. If you're wondering, yes, we use sophisticated software that has AI components to assist us in our work. I go to the client with a long list of questions that both myself and our software AI have generated. I then assess the impact and reliability of their answers. Yes, I do pay attention to their body language while they answer. Most clients don't think about it, but, much like Ian, there are times when people become uncomfortable. Last year's trip was a dream for me though. Well, other than Ian. He was a little insecure about me traveling one-on-one with another man, so he insisted to drop me off and introduce himself to Alan. He was concerned that Alan was just trying to get in my pants by taking me to the client's headquarters on a 3-night stay. I'm sure he thought he would intimidate my accountant boss. He definitely realized his error when he walked into the lobby and shook Superman's hand. I didn't give Alan that nickname. An office of 300 people did. He's literally 6'5" and looks like a young Henry Cavill. He doesn't wear glasses, so Clark Kent makes no sense. This didn't help Ian's insecurity, but a whole bunch of texting, sexting, and some awesome FaceTime sessions alleviated his worries over the course of the stay. Alan did his best to help. When he shook Ian's hand, he said that he would drive safe and promised to get his girl back to him safe and sound. Dude is so old school, lol. I can honestly say that I haven't really thought about another man romantically in 3 years. Ian was it for me. That is until this morning. Alan popped by to check in on me. He started by asking how I was. He expressed some worry because of my billable time yesterday, told you all, but he totally respected my honesty when I said that Ian and I were dealing with some stuff. Most managers I know would have started some sort of chat about how sick or vacation time should be used. He just stared me in the eye and said, "I understand, do you need anything from me?" He knew what I should have done. I knew what should have been done. His comment just affirmed that he has my back. It felt so nice when I'm feeling so vulnerable. I was working through those feelings when I realized that we were scheduled to head out to the trucking company tomorrow. I'm pretty sure he was dying to say something but struggling with how to bring it up when I said, "What time do you want to hit the road tomorrow?" He smiled, with what I saw as relief, and said, "Is 10 okay?" I nodded as I saw a lonely thumbs up in my doorway and heard a faint, "See you in the lobby at 10. He was gone like a wisp while I felt something I hadn't in some time. I'm no slouch in the looks department. I'm a 5'8", green-eyed, redhead that people in my office have nicknamed Sansa after Sophie Turner in her Game of Thrones role. I'm fit and curvy and have never had a problem with attracting men. I just haven't done a lot of hunting in my life. As I've said previously, it just isn't my style. I feel right now that I like the idea of being vindictive though. No one needs to know but me and Superman. Affairs happen all of the time. Clearly my marriage is about to end because of one. I feel the need to be desired so much because I can't stop wondering why I wasn't enough for Ian. It's amazing how our minds work under stress. I can't stop wondering what I could have done differently. What if I was adventurous enough to get good enough to join those scumbags earlier? Would I have headed off their bullshit? Why did he need to explore her body when he had me? Why wasn't I enough? It honestly just leaves me feeling like a discarded piece of garbage when I run through these thoughts. My competitive fire is definitely stoked though. I want to go back to the moment we met, and instead of stopping for him I walk by, grab the next available guy, and make out in front of him. I want to put on one of those body-hugging little black dresses with spiked heels and enter a room knowing that every man in the place wants to be with me. I need to prove to myself that this is 100 on him and that there is nothing wrong with me. That's how I feel right now, and I know it's so out of character to who I am as a person. I feel that one night, with Superman will give me everything that I need right now. I get a huge rush just thinking about it. If I could have a man like that, then Ian was clearly just a fool. So, I'm going to be open to it, even encourage it with him on this trip. I'm going to flirt and fawn with him and see if he wants a woman like me. I will be cautious though, as is my nature. I know I'm playing with fire, but the excitement is growing inside me. I'll let you all know how it goes. Update: I have ghosted Ian. I may touch base with him next week depending on whether or not Leah ever responds to me. I'll cross that bridge when I get to it. I've contacted a lawyer acquaintance of mine. We've worked together on a few files and I know that she's well respected. I'll be meeting with her next week as well. Amanda's story update 6: The Queen of the North's hunt for Superman. It's 7 o'clock now and I'm counting this as a productive day. I have 6 billable hours out of 12. Not very efficient, but I'll slough my timesheet a bit and make it look like 6 out of 9, and that should be enough to appease my corporate overlords. I'm sitting here writing about my life now because my mom texted me an hour ago to say that Ian was at her house wanting to wait for me. This wasn't totally unexpected because he's a psycho that wouldn't care about boundaries, even though it's his choices that led us to this place. I told her to tell him that I'm gone for the week to audit the big trucking company. She responded with, "Ian says that isn't until tomorrow and he'd really like to see you." I just laughed when I texted, "Tell him that, since I'm single now, Alan and I decided to take a bit more time on this trip and left a day early." I honestly wished that I hadn't ghosted him and could have said that directly. I should have unblocked him to deliver that bomb. Instead, I was trying to put my mom in the crosshairs, and she wasn't going to have anything to do with that. She berated me, and I deserved it. She texted, "This isn't some high school bullshit, Amanda, I'll tell him to leave. But you need to grow up." That hit me hard. As sexy as I wanted to feel today, I've always prided myself on being a calm, intelligent person. I have to admit that this situation has changed me already, and not in a good way. I responded to my mom and said, "I'm sorry, you're right. Please tell him that I don't want to see or talk with him right now and that I'll touch base next week. I'm going to stay at the office for a while. Let me know when he's gone." I wouldn't be surprised if he's waiting outside the building main doors now because she said he left 30 minutes ago. There's no way that he would be able to get past security at this hour. He has to know that I won't give him clearance. Right? I'm a manager, so I have a parking spot below in our building parkade. I'm pretty sure I can leave when I want without worrying about a painful confrontation, but I would feel better if it was a certainty. This doesn't change anything for me though. He's a snake that deserves to be stomped on. I'm a woman that needs to know that I'm wanted. I'll update throughout my adventure this week, and I need to admit that I'm doing this to make myself feel better. Please feel free to comment however you are feeling about my choices. I'm a big girl, I can handle both your judgment and your praise. Author's note: I think it would be a blast to create some engagement here. I'm going to be posting true edits to this post for the next few days and would love some interaction about them. Please feel free to comment and guide this young lady through some pretty rocky waters. Please don't be harsh, and please respect her as a person that is in a shitty situation and needs to work her way out of it. I think we're all going to love the ride, and let's see where it goes. Update. So, I made it to my mom's place without any drama. I'm counting that as a win. I don't know if he gave up or just missed me, but honestly, I couldn't give a rat's patootie about him right now. If you've noticed, yes, I'm done with writing like some ridiculous sailor girl. I apologize for my last post. I am still committed to landing Superman though. I believe that I need this and I can't stop myself from making this happen. I had some time to start engaging with him. We've always texted about business stuff. So I wasn't worried about breaking any boundaries, real or perceived. I started with a simple text: "What's the dress expectation this week? Is it the same as last year?" Yep, simple, straightforward, but I wanted to get him thinking about what I would be wearing. He hasn't responded yet. But I'll let you know. Update: I hear the comments about affairs with your boss. I actually agree, but I truly think that this is different. I'm not looking for anything permanent. I've never had a one-night stand, but that is what I want. One night with Superman. Nothing more, nothing less. Please just give me proof that I'm not some hag that doesn't deserve a really good man. Is that so bad? Update: his response to my text above was as expected. A simple, "No difference from last year, thanks for checking though." It's always good to double check on things that could be obvious. I knew that he wouldn't be offended by the question. Again, my only goal was to put me, myself, and I in his mind. Now was the time to push a little though and get his juices flowing. I responded with, "So high boots and skirts are okay? I didn't wear them last year, but I'm thinking of going full cowgirl for them this time. Thoughts?" I'm only feeling confident about my question because there were a few ladies in the office wearing this attire last year. We totally joked about it on the drive home, so the question could be taken more than one way: either I'm making fun of some of their staff or I'm serious about competing with them. I believe his response is going to give me a whole bunch of information. I'm actually getting pretty excited about it. Update: damn it, his response was neither inspiring nor helpful. It was just a laughing emoji. I guess I should just be happy that my sexy body in high boots and a short skirt may have entered his mind. I've clearly got his attention though, but I recognize that I'm pushing lines that should never be crossed by text. Too permanent, too real. I simply responded with, "Business casual it is. Any idea on music for the drive? Do you want me to create the playlist, or should we work on it together?" I'm hoping that he'll want to collaborate with me. Last year was a bit of a hodgepodge of random picks throughout the drive. We had some nice chats about music because of it, but I asked the question in hopes of him sharing some of his passion. I'm hoping that we can set up some real conversation this week. Update: is this pheromone stuff real? I spent $200 on some crazy perfume that was supposed to drive your man wild. I used it a few times with Ian, but I always thought that our evening was a foregone conclusion, if you know what I mean. Is this something that could help me? Please let me know if it's a necessary item. Update: I know I promised to stop talking like a sailor, but phew, yuck. His response to my music request was, "You know what I like, I trust you to keep us rocking." Like seriously. I know I walked myself into this. But now I need to create a 6-hour playlist that keeps a guy that has relationships with a few hundred of the world's greatest musicians happy. WTF was I thinking? I'm honestly screwed, but what the hell. I'll just put a list together of what we listened to last year, add a couple of cool new tracks from his clients and hope for the best. I'm kicking myself in the ass right now for thinking that I could connect with him through music. FML. Update: I'm packed and ready. Yes, I did pack my high boots and skirt. I have a plan to use them if I need them. I've also packed sneakers for the drive, 2 different pairs of high-heel cowboy boots, 2 normal cowboy boots, and a set of flats. I've picked out my 3 favorite and tightest jeans, 6 potential tops to go with them, and 2 business suits just in case. I've packed 4 sets of Lulus with sports bras to match for the drives and workout sessions. I've also packed a kick-ass set of undergarments that would make any man blush. I'm ready for this trip. I specifically chose a set of Lulus and a revealing sweater for tomorrow. I'm going to look like the hottest passenger any of you have seen, ever. I'm going to head into work dolled up about 20 more than usual. I'll change into my Lulus and tight revealing sweater at about 9:45 and cover it up with a coat. All will be revealed as we get in the car. Let's see what happens. I'll update tomorrow on the road. Go Team Superman. Update: I'm back in the office and will be hitting the road in a few hours. I did have a rough night, and yes, I don't have a confession from Ian. No, I'm not looking for an excuse to sleep with my boss. I get the inference though. I'd like to hear other possibilities for the Leah's text and Ian's responses to me. They're both clearly guilty. Is flirting with a hot guy too bad? Lulus are tight, form-fitting, yoga pants. They're very comfortable. Update: I spent the night tossing and turning. Yes, crying as well. I hate that I'm in this situation. Am I really overreacting? Can someone please give me an alternative answer to Leah's text and Ian's response? The plan for the next few days is as follows: we should have a couple hours from the time we get there to when we meet the executive and management team in their main boardroom for supper. The purpose of the meeting is to introduce ourselves and meet each department head. We'll also be setting up appointments for them over the next couple of days. This ensures accountability for them to be available for us, and we gain efficiency to get our tasks done. Alan will also be doing a brief presentation about the state of their industry from our perspective. Last year we were done by about 9. Alan then sticks around to meet with the owners. It's a family-owned business, while I head back to my room and complete my schedule, compile my questions for each meeting, and basically plan for getting all my necessary on-site tasks completed. The next 2 days will be long. Alan and I will meet for breakfast around 7 a.m. each day to run through our plans with each other. We'll be at the client's office at 8 and get to work. I'll start tomorrow with their controller. She's a very sweet lady that reminds me of a grandmother. Her and I talk throughout the year on the phone, so there won't be a lot of formality. We generally finish the day at their office around 6. The culture there is such that no one really sticks around past that time. Alan and I will head for supper and discuss our day. We generally focus on any hiccups that I have so that he can help if needed. We'll be done around 8 and I'll head back to my room to once again plan for the next day. Friday night is the last night we're there. Alan does a presentation to the owners on Saturday morning based upon the information and discussions over the couple of days. I'm there to help create the presentation and assist when he needs me. Last year we didn't get it all done and ready until about 10 at night. The meeting Saturday morning starts at 8 a.m. It will be a busy few days and we'll both be exhausted as we drive home Saturday. Alan is one of those people that you can't help but feel positive around because he's just full of that energy. Last year I was focused on Ian whenever there were a few minutes of downtime, but looking back, I can see that I was able to do so because Alan was helping to keep me calm and level-headed throughout the days. Normally this sort of schedule, interviewing multiple different personalities of people and always focusing your thoughts on what's right and wrong in what they're doing, drains the life out of you. Last year I remember feeling down a few times, and then Alan would just appear to check in between meetings, tell a quick story or crack a quick joke, and I would feel rejuvenated. It was helpful and appreciated. I'm hoping that I can return some of that energy this year, regardless of connecting beyond our professional relationship. Anyways, that's where I'm at. I'll maybe share some stories from the road depending on how it's going. Update: I'm just waiting for him in the lobby. I chickened out on the cleavage sweater. It just felt like too much. I opted for one of my tight-fitting workout shirts. It's comfy and more appropriate. Update: we're on the road. Actually we're just at a gas station on the outskirts of the city, much cheaper than downtown. He drives a truck. It's loaded and rides on the highway like a limo. It's a pretty common vehicle in my parts, with the mountains being so close. I still plan on bringing up environmental carbon footprints with him. That should lead to some fun conversations. LOL. I've already told him how much work I put in on the playlist. That's it for conversations so far though. Update: we've stopped for lunch. We chose fast food just to keep moving, but he needed to use the boys' room, so we went, and I didn't admit it. But I needed to go as well. He's now standing in line to make our order, and I'm sitting in this cozy leather seat with perfect climate control. We're at the halfway point and the conversation has been effortless. He gave the standard response of yes, we need to deal with carbon emissions. Gas-driven trucks are generally not the solution, but they are getting better and there isn't a better solution yet. He's got a very efficient house, and he invests consciously. Nothing fun in that conversation other than me teasing him about compensating for something. I've been focusing on developing a persona this week because Amanda is truly boring. If you're a fan of the show Suits, then you'll recognize the name Donna. That's my intended persona. I'm sure I won't be near as witty as her, but I'm gonna try. If you know what I'm talking about. No, Alan is way different than Harvey Specter. Mike, maybe, but just better. The music playlist kicked off a pretty great conversation. He actually grew up with the lead guitarist of one of the bands we listen to. They're awesome, but I can't say who because they are also a client. He talks with his hands when he's uninhibited. He told a few hilarious stories about their antics as kids. It gave me the opportunity to just stare at him. He's beautiful. He's wearing jeans and a nice, collared dress shirt. Definitely tailored. I don't know if all hockey players are built like him. But it's impressive. I did catch a glimpse of his chest through his buttons, and it was hairless. I had to look away for a bit after that. I don't expect much more information from him. I'm pretty sure that, during the rest of the drive, we'll be focused on client stuff. I'll give my next update when we hit the hotel. Update. The trucking industry is really competitive. It takes a lot of work to make very little money. This company does well because it also manufactures livestock and flatbed trailers. This past year has been okay for them, not special by any means. There are some question marks in the preliminary numbers for the latest fiscal quarter. That was the focus of our conversation for the past few hours. I'm showered and dressed. This evening is relatively informal, so it's jeans, a nice white blouse and a sharp blue blazer. I've texted him that I'm ready and thinking about just heading to his room to knock on the door. I'll give him 5. Update. So, the meeting went well, and I didn't have anything to do when we finished. Alan was sticking around for a bit to chat with the owners, and I finally have some free time. I didn't mention it because I wasn't sure if it would be important, but we are staying at a resort casino on the outskirts of town. Last year I spent this time schmoozing my husband and making him feel wanted. This year I can either go to my room and pine about my disaster of a life or find a way to kick up my heels and have some fun. I'm choosing the latter option. I pulled out the short skirt and thigh-high boots. Got gussied up and have $200 to lose at blackjack. I, of course, let Alan know my plan. Let's see if he joins me. Update. I'm actually enjoying myself a bit, even though my plan went the way of the dodo bird. I'm up to $400 in gambling money. I did get a bit of affirmation from guys wanting to buy me drinks at the table. I drink soda and lime when I want to look like I'm partying. It's pretty funny to see them struggle when they realize their target has no desire for alcohol. I truly had no interest in any of them tonight. I was just being nice and trying to be witty. It felt good to just play the unavailable, kick-ass girl that I am. It was fun until Superman texted to say he was shutting down and headed to bed. Big day tomorrow. Pretty much business code for, be ready to hit it hard first thing in the morning. I contemplated a text asking if he wanted me to pop by to run through any last-minute issues, but given my clothing choices, I opted to just head to bed as well. Big day tomorrow, it's my primary flirt day. And I'm hoping that I get some good responses. Update. I remember walking into a business at the start of an audit last year and every person I met looked and treated me like I was the most wicked Halloween villain they'd ever met. It was surreal but a great learning experience. My job isn't nice or in any way full of joy. My job is to ensure that known third parties can feel satisfied with the financial information they are using to make decisions with. It's a real train wreck when you understand that the people paying me aren't the ones that rely on my work. The people paying me are the ones that are the most likely to deceive everyone. Think about that for a minute. You want to make an investment but you are not sure that you can trust the information that you're given. So, you ask for a second opinion, but you don't want to pay for it because, IDK, reasons. Then you're totally fine with the opinion of some business that your target investment hired to give you their thoughts. The situation is credulous at best. Right? Welcome to the world of an auditor. I walk into a room of people that know that I'm there to question every decision, choice, system, process that they created. If I disagree with them, then I'm a villain that they shouldn't have hired. If I agree with them and the world finds out I'm wrong, then I may as well go find another profession because no one will trust me ever again. Captain Kirk had it easy with his Kobayashi Maru. Ours is real, reoccurring, and has measurable consequences. I spent the day learning about so many little coding errors. Why did this bill not include the gratuity in your coding? Why did that bill get charged to freight when it was clearly supplies? It stresses people out when they have to admit to their errors. I get it, and I understand, but I also need to determine if it's just a little one-time error that someone made while worrying about whether or not their husband was skronking some slut on the top of a mountain, or was it indifference or even intentional deception. This is my job, and I take it seriously. It's been a long day of dealing with half-truths, mistakes, and self-defensive personalities. You learn very quickly that culture and character are the keys to ensuring confidence. This company has those qualities in spades. Let's get it right and keep on trucking is a staple value statement here. As I've said, positive energy can get you through a lot of issues. As usual, we had the boardroom as our central location. Alan was his expected perfect self, dropping by and giving me advice and support whenever needed. I had one division manager get a little flirty, but he found out quickly that anything other than serious, truthful answers just brings a whole lot of pain from an auditor. That's kind of the point of AI, isn't it? Managers don't make passes at AI. People don't get defensive when some computer points out an error vs some 27-year-old lady. I can see how good our systems are becoming, and it won't be long before our AI system connects to their system and the answers are generated for all of us noobs to see. Where it's really going to get thrilling is when AI starts interviewing managers while measuring biometrics. I think I can read body language pretty well, but I don't see people's pulse, heat signature, and twitch responses anywhere near what a computer can. All I can do is hope that I'm still in the room when the transition happens. So yeah, my day is done. I'm changed into a nice set of comfortable, tight, jeans with a pretty damn sexy blouse, and high-heel cowboy boots. Alan's finishing up his work for the day and we are about to have supper together. I'm on top of my work so far, so I'm not worried about post-supper tasks. I find myself a little excited about the next few hours. I'll let you know how it goes. Amanda's story update 7. I'm just a stupid girl. As many of you predicted, my hunt was an epic fail. Thankfully I didn't go so far as to put my job or career in jeopardy, but there probably will be consequences. Here's how it all went down. Just after my last update, I texted Alan to meet me at the blackjack tables. I was hoping that he would join me for a couple of hands before dinner. I'm a solid player and wanted to show off my skills. I sat down at an empty table and asked to play 2 hands in order to keep a seat for Alan beside me when he got there. I knew I was looking hot because there was a noticeable rush of cowboys and golf shirts to my table. I was still focusing on my inner Donna persona when I said, "Hey boys, simmer down, we don't even know if this dealer is hot or not. The chorus of it looks like this table is already hot. You look lucky. And doesn't matter, you and I are going to take this casino down." Was hilarious to me because it's exactly the response you want but don't. I was left disappointed because you really want something different and mysterious. Like, get me thinking about something other than the obvious. Seriously guys, do better. We'd been playing for about 15 minutes when I got the text from Alan. It said, "Running a bit behind, meet you at the steakhouse at 7:30. Time precision matters for us and work always comes first." What he's really saying is that his day isn't going smooth, but he still needs to meet with me. I needed to be at the restaurant at 7:25. I arrived at exactly that time and Alan was just walking up when I got there. I think that every decent casino resort has a good restaurant. This one's a little special for me. I think our client books our reservations because we definitely get treated like royalty when we're there. We have a secluded booth in the back corner that's private and quiet. It's perfect to allow us to have a nice meal while also talking about sensitive client information. That isn't what I find so special though. If you've ever been on a corporate retreat or dinner event, you know that there are 3 classes of attendees when it comes to drink orders. There are the people that just want to drink what they like and don't care about how it will mix with their food. Then there's the people that really want to focus on their palate. They try to pair their drink choice with their food choice. Everyone knows the base: red with red food, white with white food, wine choice. You often get these pretend sommeliers though. They want to make an impression by sharing their thoughts as well as challenging the suggestions of their servers. At first, you label them as pretentious to yourself, at least I did. I now know that this was my own insecurity. It's a hobby for them to experience unique tastes on the company's dime. It should be applauded, not judged. It's the 3RD group that I fall into. I don't drink, because I can't, and that sometimes makes me feel like an outcast. I want to feel what they feel. I've often thought about trying to participate, but the fear of falling to floor, twitching like a fish out of water in front of them, wins every time. There's always been this feeling of judgment though when I'm at a table of people just wanting to have fun with food and wine. I'm sure that they think I have some sort of moral or personal barrier that I'm projecting upon them, when the truth is that I just can't. I'm not going to presume that this is what an alcoholic that is fighting their urges feels, because I understand that those feelings must be so much more intense, but I can relate. Last year, on our first dinner here, Alan picked up on my hesitations about drinks. I was wrapped up in knots about how my choices would be perceived by him when he just said, "They have some pretty awesome mocktails here." I'm sure that I visibly slumped back at that moment. It was like all of my tension just flew out of my body. What followed was a fantastic journey of pairing food and drink. The servers at this restaurant knew their stuff. It's a Native American resort that has a strong desire to support non-alcoholic choices. I experienced some of that food and drink combination tastings experience and it was fantastic. Alan fully supported it throughout. He's a beer drinker stuck in a wine drinker's world, that's how he described it anyways. He just said that he's always enjoyed the experience here and we had a fun night talking about flavors and hints of mint or berries with food. I say all of this because I was excited. I was looking forward to more experiences while being a little flirty with Superman. I'd been throwing little Donna-isms at him all day. Saying things like, "I don't need a reason to be spectacular" when he praised me, or "I know people better than they know themselves," when I was able to get to the truth of one of my queries. It honestly boosted my confidence and made me feel good about myself. Apparently, it hit a note though. It actually pisses me off that this became a thing, but I do need to acknowledge that I had a part. I'd mentioned that I had a division manager make a pass at me but shut him down. I didn't give the details though and they clearly mattered. He came to the boardroom on time for his meeting. We'd just introduced ourselves and shook hands when Alan popped his head in to ask a quick question before we started. I knew the answer off the top, and Alan gave a predictable response of, "Thanks, I figured you'd know." I, being full-on confident, said, "I'm Amanda, I know everything," while giving a wink to the manager guy. Alan chuckled and whisked away. I then went on with my interview. It got ugly when I was asking him about some expense report discrepancies and he looked at me, all serious, and said, "Why don't I just book us a hotel room tonight and we'll make sure it's coded right tomorrow? Don't ever say that to an auditor." He was mocking not only what my job is but also me as a person. I responded swiftly and with venom when I retorted, "Is that how you spend company money?" He knew immediately that he'd walked into a shitstorm. He stuttered, "No, I just thought we were having some fun here." I replied, "This isn't a game, here's what's going to happen now. I'm going to send you a listing of every expense report that you've submitted over the past year. I need you to give me a written description of the expense purpose, who you were with, and why it was an appropriate business expense for every line item on every report." I'd pulled up his listing on my computer while I was speaking and said, "It looks like you submit your expenses weekly, and I can see we have about 48 of them here. I've emailed them to you, and I expect your responses by noon tomorrow. We'll decide how to proceed from there. Thank you for your time." I could feel his anger and hesitation as he stood up. I'm pretty sure that I interrupted some stupid comment from him when I said, "Keep your afternoon free tomorrow, I'm sure that there will be follow-up questions." He then slunk out, not noticing my shaking hands. This started a bitch session throughout department managers about how abrasive and manipulative I am. It ran up the chain and Alan had spent the past hour or so talking with executives about it. Dinglenut department manager had complained that I was flirty and blew up a harmless little joke into a witch hunt. Other managers had circled their wagons with this guy, complaining how provocative I've been. Some had seen me in the casino the previous night dressed in my boots and skirt. It all was just, well, gross. Alan stuck to facts with me and heard my side of the issue. I'd CC'd him my original request and he forwarded it on to upper management, as well as Dinglenut, with a simple, straightforward message: "It is our expectation that we receive the requested information by noon tomorrow. Please reply to all immediately if this is not possible." He told me that this whole thing is ridiculous, but it does happen sometimes when people are challenged by 3rd parties. He will deal with the supposed joke directly with upper management and that it was clearly unprofessional and warranted investigation not only by us but by the company HR group. I fell apart and turned into a sobbing mess when he looked into my soul and said, "Now that this junk has been dealt with, WTH is going on with you?" I couldn't hold it in any longer. I've been trying so hard to keep myself together and be the strong person that I know I am. It just all became too much. I told him about Ian. I shared the text with him. I described my confrontation with him. I apologized to him about holding it all in and trying to work through my issues alone. It hurt so much to share my pain and sorrow, but opening up also helped a lot. Alan just listened. He didn't try to offer excuses or meaning to the situation. He just listened and asked really thought-out questions that pushed me to reveal more and more of my insecurities about Ian and I's relationship. It hurts a bit too much to write about it now. I may do so in the future. We ended dinner on a high note when we had dessert and a special new mocktail that was supposed to bring us happiness in life. Yes, there are fun stories behind each drink. He gave me a big hug and told me to take the day tomorrow. I was able to convince him that I was okay and needed to get this job done. I promised to take some time next week to properly deal with my marriage and myself. So here I am, finishing a morning coffee and getting ready to enter a den of vipers that I've riled up. I have a plan though, and I'm pretty sure my grandma controller will help me calm everyone down. I'll update from the road tomorrow. Wish me luck. Amanda's story update 8. The shoemaker's shoes. The den of vipers was swept away by some quick communication from upper management and a supportive email from my sweet grandmother Ally. The infamous manager as well as a few of his cronies came to the boardroom to apologize to me directly. I accepted the apologies, and it doesn't really matter if I believe that they were sincere or not. Damage was done. There's a lot of things that happen in an audit when a department head makes a statement that calls into question their commitment to being a trustworthy custodian of corporate funds. Remember when I talked about Step 1 and Step 2? Our assessment of management and their ability to ensure reliable systems and processes is one of the key elements of our risk tolerance. We then communicate our tolerance to our software and AI, and it uses that as a basis for running tests on the client's software. In this situation, we needed to reduce our risk tolerance, which led to our software doing a whole lot of more testing. Ultimately, the management team is going to be under a lot more scrutiny for a while after this. Trust is fickle, and it was impossible to ignore Dinglenut's words. Some may see this as vindictive, but the change was absolutely necessary. If something goes wrong in this business, imagine how quickly the public would blame us if we treated his statement like a joke. The lawsuits would be incredible. I was able to focus for the rest of the trip and made sure to give no air to any drama or whispers. We ended on a high note this morning with the owners, and it feels like a success. I'm hoping to be invited back next year, but will understand if there are concerns with me as part of the team going forward. That's not the focus of this post though. I'm starting to realize that I'm a really good auditor but also a very irresponsible controller. This occurred to me during our drive back as Alan was asking questions about the shop. It's weird to me that when Alan and I talk 6 hours can just fly by. He started his investigation into my personal life by asking me about the day when Leah sent her text. His first question about Leah's text was, "Why do you think it was sexual?" My response was the same as what it's been all week: what else could it be? He said, "Seriously Amanda, after everything you've just been through, you don't understand that not everything is sexual? You weren't hitting on him when you winked at him, you were simply trying to be confident while internally dealing with some pretty serious stuff, right?" I said, "Yes," while thinking to myself, oh if he only knew. "So why don't we be auditors and consider other possibilities?" He asked, not knowing that I was a bit distracted. We agreed there's a high probability that the text was about sex. The purpose of this discussion though was to talk about what else the text could mean. What else could Leah feel the need to apologize to me, as well as ask forgiveness from me, for? Also, who is we? We started talking about how other ways in which Leah is connected to me. There really was no answer to this. Her and I only really saw each other when biking. I don't for a second believe that the text had anything to do with that, primarily because of Ian's responses. This became a common theme in Alan and I's discussion because almost every possibility became improbable when you consider Ian's guilty responses to my confrontation of him. The only other connection that Leah has to me is through the shop. She does at times get paid a commission for helping us sell product. Actually, both her and Carrie get paid commissions from time to time. Again, though, why would Ian be defensive if they were getting false commissions? That's when Alan reminded me that Ian wasn't the only owner of the shop. That's when it hit me, Ian's brother wasn't a fan of our resale business. He was always worried that we would buy the wrong toy and lose money. He began getting really concerned when the shop started buying and selling boats. Leah and Carrie were getting most of their commissions from boats. They had the connections with the rich and famous, and they would recommend the shop when someone wanted to buy a boat for their summer stay on the lake. It's kind of weird how these people think, but they'd rather buy a boat, use it for 3 months and then sell it rather than rent. We actually have a funny story of buying and selling the same boat 3 times over the past 2 years. So, yeah, that's where I'm at. There's a high probability that Ian and Leah got it on, but there is a small possibility that Ian, Leah, and Carrie got together to defraud Ian's brother under my nose as controller. There is no possibility that this is some sort of drunken text or bullying based upon Ian's handling of my confrontation with him. I'm home at my mother's now. And it's time to find out what I'm going to do. I'm hoping that I can have a chat with Leah tomorrow. Regardless, I need to have another chat with Ian, and I should probably get in the shop to see if anything is happening with resales. I'll let everyone know how it goes tomorrow. Thank you so much for your support. Amanda's story update 9. For better or worse. I didn't mention it yesterday, but my mom had dinner ready for me when I got home. She was excited to hear about my trip but wasn't thrilled when it became clear that I had left with intentions of being a dumbass. She was actually having belly laughs when I was describing what my shenanigans got me in return. I love her, but her sense of humor is wicked. I spent the night thinking about this crazy roller coaster of a week. I was trying to figure out what my plan was for today, Sunday. I knew it would involve both Leah and Ian, but little did I know, I really had no clue how the day would go. I started the day by pulling out my personal phone from my side table. Yes, I have a personal phone and a work phone. No, my work phone is not a burner phone. My work phone is only used for client communication and work. Yes, my work phone is provided to me, and yes, I pay for my own personal phone. Well, actually, the shop pays for it. I guess I'll just add that to the list of things I must take care of after this ridiculous mess is done. My first act was to send Leah a text. Leah, I know you've been away and were due back last night. Can you please respond to my texts this morning? No use in being confrontational, I'm just hoping she responds. I then went through the rest of my hundreds of texts, emails, voicemails, 99 of which were from Ian. It's the other one though that were interesting. Carrie had left me a voicemail. She knew that Ian and I were fighting and wanted to know if I wanted to have lunch with her. The other voicemail was from Ian's brother, Tim, Jr. TJ for short. I expected it to be just Ian using his brother's phone, but was surprised when TJ left a message saying that this had nothing to do with Ian and me. He had a question about the shop books. Thinking about the shop discussion with Alan yesterday in mind, I was interested in talking with him. I took the risk and called TJ hoping that Ian was not next to him, and he wasn't. TJ said that Ian has been a mess all week and literally useless at work. This left TJ trying to run the shop by himself. Hearing that, I fully expected him to start complaining to me about how he needed me to consider reconciliation or something like that. That wasn't it though. He said that he's been trying to keep up with the paperwork and ended up with a few questions about the shop's used inventory. Given my thought process from yesterday that Ian, Leah, and Carrie have been messing around with commissions, I asked TJ if there is any way that he and I could meet at the shop without Ian being around. TJ asked if maybe sending Ian to the city for a part would work, knowing full well that Ian would use the opportunity to try and visit me. I asked my mom if she would be okay running interference for a bit, and she agreed. I then hit the road so that I would be near the shop when Ian left. I've always liked TJ. He's one of those guys that's salt of the earth. I think he'd give you his shirt off his back if he thought you needed it. He's a big teddy bear, mountain man that loves to hunt and fish. He's the better mechanic of the two of them, so he generally manages the repair jobs and parts inventory. Ian is a good mechanic, has a quicker wit, and is the better salesman. He manages the used toy sales and inventory. Sundays are the day for the brothers to organize their business. They'd get in the shop after breakfast, catch up on their week and run through projects on the go. I'm sure that they were up to usual boy fun and games as well. I'd show up after lunch to get the books up to speed. I'd start by entering in the working orders into our system. That process removes parts from our inventory listing and assigns them to active jobs. I then record our sales, which closes off the applicable jobs and gives me an amount for cash received in the week. We don't give credit, except credit cards, or checks. It's cash or debit only. The boys have always been adamant about this. The sign for the shop says it clearly, and it's one thing that their dad always insisted on. I've tried to change their mind, arguing that accepting credit cards would increase business, to no success. At this point in my day, I'd give the boys their jobs. I'd give them each a list of 20 inventory items randomly selected by our system, and they would go and count them for me. I'd compare their counts to our system, and we would investigate any discrepancies. This did happen from time to time, and it usually was a part that wasn't put on a work order. I would enter any used toy sales and purchases as well as enter any other expenses while the boys were counting. I would then also ask them to count the amount of cash in the shop. We carry a substantial amount in an old antique safe that only the two of them can open. I compare the balance of what they have to our system's number, and most of the time the balance is agreed. If they didn't, then the boys would have to figure out why. It usually ended up being some small purchase like pizza for the staff that they didn't get a receipt for. We've never been so far apart that I was worried. I'm worried now though. TJ's first question was about our used inventory. Apparently, there are 2 boats and 4 ATVs missing somewhere. Total cost of about $90,000. He said that he asked Ian about it, and Ian told him to stop worrying about his responsibilities and that he'd get it straightened out once he made things right with me. We both had to admit that sometimes the boats would be left at the marina and ATVs were sometimes left with trustworthy buyers to test drive, but it's fall. So the marina made little sense, and 4 ATVs out at the same time was excessive for us. I pulled the ledger where Ian would record the date, description, and serial number of the used toy. The ledger's page and row number then corresponded with the file for that toy. I was looking for purchase and registration documents. There were handwritten bills of sale for each of them, but that was it. No registration documents, no work orders, no storage location. Nothing. All of them were bought in the past 3 weeks, so it may have just been Ian falling behind in paperwork, but it's something that warrants a conversation. TJ then asked for the expected cash balance. I had to tell him that I would need a day to get that for him. I did start to enter some of the data before my mom called to say that Ian left to come back. I packed up and chatted with TJ about next steps. We agreed that we need more information before taking any action like confronting Ian. I promised that I would be back on Tuesday to chat with both of them. I made a quick stop at the house, and it was nothing short of a disaster zone. I cried just looking at it. It's clear that Ian is in as much pain as I am. I contemplated cleaning up a bit and leaving him a note, but realized it's best that he didn't know I was in town today. Despite my stupid activities and thoughts this past week, I love and cherish him. I know this upcoming week is going to be very hard, and I find myself needing to hold and talk with him. I ran through possible reasons for the missing inventory in my head as I drove to my mom's. It really comes down to trust. If Ian is not up to something, then either the toys are already sold or are off-site, and he just needs to get his paperwork straightened out. If he is up to something, then the $90,000 is gone and my husband has some explaining to do. I hope it's the former. And I plan on calling the marina tomorrow to see if I can end my worries. Supper was waiting for me when I got home. I ran through my day with my mom, and she told me that she spent a couple hours comforting Ian. He didn't open up much to her, other than to say that he needs to talk with me, he misses me, and he wants to make things right with me. She said that she mostly listened, held, and talked to him about taking care of himself right now. I cried in her arms and thanked her for her help. I texted Ian just before shutting down for the night saying, "Sorry I missed you, but I'm just not ready to talk yet. Can I meet you at the shop on Tuesday?" He called first but then sent a flurry of texts back, basically regurgitating everything he's said 100 times at this point. He finally responded yes when I said that we would talk on Tuesday if that worked for him. I have the next 3 days off work as per Alan's orders. I do have a meeting with my lawyer friend tomorrow at lunch, but will otherwise be getting the box of paperwork from the shop entered into our system remotely. I'll post more tomorrow if anything exciting comes up. Thank you for your kind words and support. Update. Sorry, I didn't mention that Leah didn't respond at all today. My messages still show as unread. I did get a text from Rob asking if I'd heard from her. I responded no and asked him to have her contact me if he sees her. Amanda's story update: 10 lipstick on a pig. Halloween is around the corner, and I've never been a fan. I get it. Kids love candy, and who doesn't love dressing up? Don't we all enjoy watching monsters, aliens, and or psychos killing hot college kids on film? I guess, much like a lot of things, I'm just different. I've never liked the taste of chocolate, or most sweets for that matter. My diet has been controlled for most of my life, so pop and chips never really were part of my teenage years. My mom did dress me up when I was young, and I do have a few fond memories, but after my dad left right around this time of year, I focused my attention more on staying home and helping her hand out candies to cute little kids. We would watch comedies and romance movies. It became our thing. Us against the world. I hadn't been at her house on a weekday for a long time. It was nice to sit at the kitchen table with her this morning rather than running off after devouring a bagel and some fruit. We sat across from each other, laptops open, coffee to each of our right, talking and giggling while we worked. It was fun but didn't last too long. 9 o'clock came and things got serious. I knew that my mom would be making calls for the next hour. I moved to my room to make my own calls. My first being to Carrie. She picked up right away saying, "Amanda, I've been so worried about you. How are you doing?" I said, "As good as can be, I suppose. I guess you've heard some things." She paused for a second, then said, "Yeah, something about a drunken text from Leah last weekend that's causing problems between you and Ian." What exactly did she text you? Clearly, she knew a lot, and it was more than what I was comfortable with. I think I've said it before, Carrie isn't good with empathy and advice. I didn't see much purpose in hashing out my marriage problems with her. The fact that she's a client as well led to my response of, "It was enough to make me mad for sure. I'm just hoping she can clear things up when she finally gets back." I keep thinking that drunken texts shouldn't be taken this seriously, and I do believe that Ian and I will find our way through this. I think I heard a sigh of relief. She then said, "That's good to hear. If I see Leah, I'll encourage her to clear this up." I finished the conversation with, "Please do and thank you. Let's catch up over lunch next week." I heard her say, "Text me." As I was hanging up, I took some time to gather my thoughts. I was trying to figure out how Carrie would know about Leah's text. As far as I know, I've only shown it to Ian, Mom, and Alan. Leah would also know about it, of course. I'm guessing Ian talked to her, but I can't figure out why. There is only one lake large enough in our area to have a marina. I called the office and asked if our shop had any boats harbored there. The answer was no. I followed up with descriptions of our 2 missing boats, but they didn't have anything like them. I was starting to feel a bit defeated. I was really hoping that they would be easily found. I went back to my data entry until about 11 a.m. I then got ready and went for lunch with my lawyer friend. I wanted to make sure that I understood the process, timeline, and key issues for consideration in a divorce process. I cried in public while discussing it. It was embarrassing and I should have known better. The discussion just made everything so real. My friend was very helpful in calming me down and even found a way to make me laugh before we were done. She promised to send me an email that outlines the process and answers my questions as we finished our lunch. I gave her a hug, said thank you, and asked her to send me a bill for her time. I went back to working on the shop's books as soon as I got back to my mom's. I needed to get the job done. It took 3 more hours to get everything entered, and it was clear that the past week was a lot less productive than I'd seen in years. It sucks for the business, but I was pleased that, for once this week, my expectations matched reality. I texted TJ the expected cash balance and he replied almost immediately that we were out about $500. That's fine right now. Ian has been a mess this week and probably has some receipts to hand in. It's the missing toys that we're worried about. The cash balance almost agrees because we have about $90,000 recorded as being used to purchase 2 boats and 4 ATVs that hopefully exist. We agreed again to address it with Ian tomorrow, and I promised that I would continue to investigate the issue until then. I'd brought copies of the bills of sale with me. They were standard purchase sale contracts that we had a lawyer make for us when we started selling used toys. I didn't recognize the names on the contracts, and other than the toy details there was no other information except for a phone number written on the top of the contract for the most expensive boat. I called it and I'm still trying to process what I discovered. Fun fact, the shop's official corporate name is something like ABC Industries Limited, so, even though our business is repairing, buying, and selling used toys, our corporate name doesn't show that. I'm starting to think this matters. I called the number fully expecting Mr. Richard Watson, the buyer on the contract, to answer, but instead it was an official sounding lady saying, "Thank you for calling XYZ Wholesale Corp. How can I help you?" Normally I would have just started talking, but the name caught me by surprise, and I quickly said, "One moment please," while turning my head away from the phone to think. I knew this company and I remember them clearly. A few months ago, Ian hadn't put his papers in my to be entered tray, so I just gathered them all up from his messy desk. In that pile was an invoice from this company for about $70,000 that made no sense. It looked like a 3-page parts order, but not of any sort of stuff we would ever use. I asked Ian about it, and he said that he'd received it in the mail. I then offered to call them to find out what's up, but he said he already did and that it was an error that they apologized for and fixed. This led to a little mini argument of me invading his space and him not doing his job. It was bitching at each other, and we got over it. I didn't forget the company though. It's one of the things we look for as auditors. There are scammers that just send invoices to large businesses in hopes of being paid. It's the reason that vendors need to be approved, and managers need to authorize payment. In today's world, AI automatically identifies all first-time vendor transactions, and we've always looked at new vendor procedures. I made note of the company just in case I saw it again. Once can be a mistake, but any other incidences would be fraud in my book. I immediately went into auditor mode and introduced myself as Amanda from Big Accounting Firm. I apologized for calling so late in the day, but said that I needed to hand the file over to my supervisor tomorrow morning and would get in trouble if I didn't have a record of checking in with her company about their account balance with ABC Industries Inc. She was sympathetic and said that she would do what she could to help. She was a bit chatty, asking me to wait but also wondering what it's like to work at my firm. She then said that there was no balance receivable from ABC. I followed up by asking when the last payment was made by ABC to her company, and her response floored me. She said last Monday. I asked her the amount, but she wasn't comfortable just sharing that over the phone, so I said, "Is it $92,350? This was the cost amount for the missing used toys." She confirmed that it was. Having confirmed that I knew the transaction just then, she agreed to email me a copy of the invoice because I didn't have time to search for it. 15 minutes later, there it was, a 3-page listing of parts that have never been, nor should be, near our shop. All paid for in cash last Monday. I was sitting at my laptop staring at it when the next bomb hit. It was a text from Leah that said, "Hey, sorry for freaking you out with my text. I was just drunk and sad that we hadn't involved you more in our more extreme rides. Let me buy you lunch so that we can talk about it. I feel like I'm having a psychotic episode. I'm going to shut down for a while. I'll update when I've had a chance to process this day. Thank you for your support." Amanda's story update 11 Tangled webs. I'm just going to get something off my chest before I get to the meat of my post. Yes, I know that Hayden Christensen played Anakin Skywalker, not Luke. I made the comment for effect, and I was mad at the time. Please stop the DMS about it. I do find myself thinking about Anakin and his transition to becoming Darth Vader. How he started innocently, but love and hubris along with a large piece of manipulation led him to becoming a villain. Is that Ian's arc here? I think I'd rather he was wandering around stuffing his lightsaber in places it shouldn't go. I'm sure many of you have recognized the meaning of that fake invoice contract fiasco that I discovered today. As I said, once can be a mistake, but seeing it twice is probable fraud. I went through our accounting system and found a group of used toy inventory from a couple months ago that added to the number that the previous fake invoice amounted to about $70,000 at that time. That grouping of supposed used inventory was then sold for a little more than $95,000 over the next couple weeks, with about $10,000 in commissions paid out to Leah and Carrie. FML, what are these people up to? There is a story that has formed part of Alan's legend in our office. The drummer for one of his band clients complained to him about costs increasing a lot. Superman took the comment seriously and started comparing costs for this band to the costs for similar activity level band clients and agreed that they were too high. He started digging deeper into expenses and noticed a handwritten invoice for a $3,000 light bulb. It was submitted by their touring manager, and he explained it as overpriced but necessary for their show that day. Superman did the research, then called the vendor to discuss the price. The vendor denied that they would charge that much even in an after-hours deal. It was then discovered that the $3,000 wasn't for a light bulb. It was for a lighting package for a garage. The real invoice was produced, and further investigation revealed that the touring manager had charged the band about $40,000 for false expense claims that allowed him to pay for a new garage and some basement renovations. He was fired immediately, no severance, no bonus, but also never charged with a crime. Superman had a client for life though. I don't believe that this situation with the shop is anything like that. I just don't see why Ian would be paying another company for nothing and something is being sold by him, Carrie and Leah. I went through used toy purchases and sales in our system, and pretty much every month there's a group of toys that comes in and goes out within 3 weeks of each other. My conclusion was very scary to think of. I needed a second opinion, so I called Superman. We talked on the phone and then he asked me to come by his house to show him in person. It's so nice to know that the universe loves to kick a person when they're down. As far as kicks go, this wasn't too bad. Alan is married and has a kid. His wife's name is Chris. And she's beautiful, intelligent and kind. I have her by a few inches in height, so yeah, small victories. Their little girl was asleep already, but her pictures were as cute as you'd expect. Chris made us tea as we sat down in his home office to talk about this mess. I ran him through all my discoveries, my evidence, and my thoughts. Alan listened intently and asked a few probing questions. He asked about Leah and Rob. He asked about our negotiations for direct shipments from the parts manufacturers. He also showed some interest in Carrie's connections with us. He concluded his thoughts when I described my conversation with XYZ Wholesale. We both agreed that we were probably dealing with a money laundering scheme. I've never seen Alan tense up before, but he was a little rattled when we both agreed on the situation. I was visibly shaking, and my voice was cracking. We both know that good people and businesses don't have a need for false transactions recording. From what I identified, the shop had purchases of about $850,000 and sales of about $1 million in the past year that are probably illegal transactions. We agreed that the most probable illegal activity was buying and selling drugs. It just makes sense that Carrie, Leah, and Rob are using their connections with the rich and famous to sell them product. Ian is the one buying it for them. Unfortunately, TJ and I are unknowing participants. The scary part being that there is someone or some group in the chain that needs the cash laundered. Obviously, this leads to thoughts of physical risk. Especially given that I had a direct conversation with the seller company and my work email that I gave has my full name in it. Alan and Chris asked if I wanted to stay at their house tonight. I told them that I needed to see my mom. Alan said that he needed some time to think about possible courses of action for me to consider. He admitted that he had some drug connections in his youth and that his uncles used to deal in marijuana where he grew up. Chris nodded her head, showing her awareness, and it kind of made them look, well, human to me. I suppose Superman is maybe too perfect of an image for him. We both acknowledged that there is no evidence of illegal activity yet. While it is probable, it isn't certain. We also both see that the connection we are making to drugs is pure supposition. Other possible illegal activities could be exotic animals, guns, unsanctioned or stolen antiques and art, or even human trafficking. I'm sure there's more than these possibilities, but I'm getting sick thinking about it. I left Alan's place around 10 p.m. and I'm now home with my mom. I haven't told her my fear yet, all I've said is there's some weird stuff going on with the shop's books that may become a problem. I'm not going to freak her out about Pablo Escobar's army hunting us down just yet. I'm pretty sure sleep isn't in my future though. I plan on heading into the office tomorrow to meet again with Alan. He said that he would be making some inquiries and asked me to pop by at 9:30 to talk some more. I'm open to any ideas that you fine Redditors have as well. I'm scared AF right now. I'll try to update when I can. Hopefully. Amanda's story update 12: The Old and the New. I spent the night thinking about Ian and our life together. Early on, it was truly exciting. Every weekend was special. We'd hike, bike, or ATV to these incredible locations and spend our weekends talking, laughing and making love. My Instagram became a staple of office talk. People would stop me in the hallways or ask to take me to lunch just to talk about my pictures and find out where I was. If you ever get a chance to experience a sunrise or sunset at the top of a mountain with a clear calm lake reflecting all the fantastic colors, then you will know what magic looks like. Ian introduced me to a world that I would have never seen otherwise. He was everything I needed emotionally and physically. My cup was full there and I think I gave him the same. It was intellectually where I needed something more. When Ian was growing up exploring the mountains, I was reading. I loved thrillers, fantasy, romance, and the classics. He had no interest in any of it. If it wasn't for the shop, I'm sure I would have started to get frustrated a bit. I've mentioned all the work that was done to turn it around and make it a business. It made me feel so empowered to be allowed to make decisions and have the support of both Ian and TJ. Creating systems and processes for a business is very easy in your head. It's implementation where everything goes to shit. If the people that are involved in executing the system or process aren't responsive, it will fail. I've been privileged in my job to be exposed to some of the most sophisticated information systems on our planet, but none of that would have worked for the shop. The boys insisted on cash because the few times that their dad ever took checks, they bounced. It was a hard rule for them, and no amount of logic was going to change it. They refused credit cards because no big corporation was going to take 2.5 to 3 of their money. They only allowed e-transfers and debit because the bank gave us the machine, so it didn't cost anything. They hated keyboards and didn't want to pay for a scanning system, so manual work orders and handwritten receipts. It was all so archaic to me, but we made it all work. I'm trained to look for deficiencies in systems and processes that could lead to incorrect information. I'm not trained in fraud detection or prevention. I shouldn't feel so bad about this situation, but I can't help it. It was around 2 years ago now when Ian first brought up starting to buy and sell used vehicles. Both TJ and I were a bit worried about the cash investment, but he promised to start slow. We made a budget that only reflected the reinvestment of sales back into purchases. Basically, he couldn't buy more vehicles until he sold the existing ones. I forecast everything based upon industry norms for margins and turnover. It looked like a slow, steady, not very intensive, profitable business segment. We agreed to start with $30,000 and let Ian go to work. He exceeded the forecast almost immediately, and I thought that we'd found Ian's passion. I wish my audit radar was on and not clouded. I may have asked, how is he exceeding expectations? I wonder if I would have noticed or found anything. I showered this morning thinking about all of this. How it was made possible by the fact that we have a safe full of cash, rather than depositing money daily. This avoided any FinCEN or FinTrack notifications. How our handwritten documents and manual filings allowed Ian to hide things. How my absence from the day-to-day made this fiasco so easy to maintain. I feel duped and angry. That was my state of mind as I entered the elevator this morning. The contrast in environments between the shop and my firm is incredible. In the old days 300 people would probably take up 5 or 6 floors of a building. We have 2.5. At any given time, 50 to 65 of our office personnel are working from home. It's a hybrid environment where you have the choice to work anywhere you would like within reason. There are sofas, comfy chairs, even lazy boy chairs that have USB and power connections. There's stand-up tables or cubicles with sit-down or stand-up desks. On nice days, there's a patio with all sorts of seating and table options. All available on a first-come first-served basis. Managers and higher can book an office for privacy. Of course, there are larger partner-level offices as well. I've always made a point of trying to be in the office. I focused on my business career growth during weekdays, and I saw meeting other professionals face-to-face as a big part of that plan. When you're a regular, everyone starts to respect your location choice and leaves it alone. I'm in the office about 200 days a year and I usually get the office that I like. Alan on the other hand is only here about 50 days a year and it's always an event when he is in the building. He doesn't use an office. He takes one of the boardrooms and Daryl is always at the door. Daryl is Alan's executive secretary. Everyone assumes that he's his bodyguard as well. If you want to visualize him, just Google Terry Tate office linebacker. The videos are hilarious and that's his nickname. He's truly a teddy bear though. When I walked off the elevator I checked in at reception. It's the only way in or out that doesn't trigger an alarm. We have 4 receptionists, and I know them all. Sue greeted me, saying, "Hi Amanda, we didn't expect you in today." I said, "I know," while handing her a stack of files that had our used toy contracts from the shop. She grabbed them and asked, "Timing?" I replied, "I'll be leaving at about 10:30 and will need to take the files with me." She said, "No problem," while putting the files in a sealable bag and attaching a barcode sticker to it. We are a paperless office. All documents are handled in this way, they are scanned, and we get an email notification with a link to the documents. We then pick up the originals at the front desk or they are mailed back to the source. Sue then asked, "Your usual office?" I said, "Not today, I'm just here to meet with Alan for a bit." She giggled and said, "Oh, so you're one of the lucky ones." While smiling at her neighbor, Nancy. Office gossip is a crazy thing. Everything I've been thinking about the past 12 hours is along this same line. People's perception may be their reality, but it isn't necessarily the truth, is it? This FN realization has been an epiphany for me. 48 hours ago, I was convinced that my husband was cheating on me. Now I'm convinced that he's a criminal. I thought that Alan was this single available guy because everyone in the office believed that he was. Not once was it mentioned that he was married or a father. Everyone gets so excited when he's here. The young people talk about seeing him, Daryl or one of his high-profile clients like they've spotted a superhero. Reception gets giddy like today. He doesn't have IG or FB. We've all looked. There are pictures of him online standing next to some band or athlete. Daryl's sometimes seen in the wings, but there's never been a woman at his arm. I should have asked him if there was someone special in his life, but I didn't, and I feel like a creep because I didn't. Just thank goodness I didn't go too far and end up with him thinking that I'm some sort of office floozy. Sue buzzed me through the door, and I went upstairs and towards the north end of the floor. On the way there I pass various iterations of offices, open spaces with seats and coffee tables, and innovation areas. The innovation areas are very cool to me. They have these clear walls that are smart boards. I've used them for team planning sessions, and the boards capture what we write so that we have a record of the discussion. It's a useful tool to gain engagement from your team, when appropriate of course. I've always liked the north end because it feels so calm and nice. It has a little buffet area that always stocked with various juices, soda, and milk on ice. There are also hot and cold snacks. It's early, so there's breakfast sandwiches and cereal options. We have one of these stations on each floor, but this one has a seating area with a view. Daryl always stands at a high table near the door to the corner boardroom when Alan's there. He smiled at me when I walked up to him. His voice is always so smooth. He said that Alan and Jennifer will be ready for me in about 15 minutes. He picked up on my confusion immediately, and followed up with, Jennifer Danforth is a forensic accountant from LA that flew in this morning. I've added these past 4 paragraphs as I've been waiting. I plan on heading to the shop after this meeting. I'll update when I can. As always, thank you for your support. Amanda's story finale. Shakespeare in the Park. I can't do this anymore. I've been trying so hard to be confident and strong, when the reality is that I've made so many mistakes that I feel incompetent. I wish that there were some easy answers that would change the situation, but there aren't. Life is hard and control is definitely an illusion. Forensic accountants are trained in fraud detection and prevention. They participate in white-collar crime investigations. They act as special witnesses for the courts. They are the cool kids in the accounting world. Everyone loves thrillers, right? I'd love to have a story where my curiosity exposed some fantastic scheme to steal from good, hard-working people. Yet here I was explaining how my FN husband was using his and his brother's money to do something that gave them more money back and paid a couple of side chicks. That's the gist of my story, and no one will be making a special about it. Jennifer at least had real-life experience in what I was dealing with, though. She understood my hesitation to pass final judgment. She agreed that probabilities were high, but there are no smoking gun here, and assumptions are dangerous. She made it clear that I was her client. Not the government, not Alan, not the shop, just me. She looked at the purchase contracts that I had our front desk PDF, and her opinion was that the signatures were all made by the same person. Not 6 different people, but one person. That was the final straw. Ian was falsifying documents. Ooh, what a bad hombre, right? How dare he sign fake names to paper? Such a scary Halloween monster. That's the nature of white-collar crime, though. Some individual finds some con or loophole and then steals money from someone else. The benefit here doesn't make sense because there's no need for fake paperwork. It's being done for someone else's benefit. The key questions are who and why. Jennifer laid out options for me given the known situation. Here's what they were. Option 1, do nothing. She explained that this is always an option, and anyone that doesn't consider it is a fool. I can choose to ignore everything that I know. I'm unaware of any illegal activities, and it is possible that nothing illegal is happening. I'm clearly not involved, so why worry about it? The key is to just accept this as reality. Option 2, lay out what I know to authorities. She said that she could have the local DEA representatives meet us within the hour. She agreed that the DEA was the right approaching point because they had done a search on the owners of XYZ Wholesale. It came up as an anonymous numbered company, but the upstream structure was consistent with other cartels. She warned, though, that they wouldn't care about me and the lack of true evidence could lead to problems. Option 3, wait and see. She has seen on rare occasions people making horrible decisions without any common sense. She laughed as she talked about a situation where a woman unknowingly walked herself into one of the biggest drug busts in California history. She mirrored my thoughts, though, when she said, "Once can be a mistake and this isn't that." This option only makes sense if you need to know rather than accept the probability. It's risky but understandable. It truly means acting like you've chosen option 1 but understanding that option 2 is the most probable result with a better result. If you've been paying attention to my story and understand who I am, then you know that I chose option 3. I needed to know even though I had my assumptions. I've been focusing on myself so much. I haven't given Ian a chance to even try to explain. He's worth that at the very least. I'm just praying for some honesty. I've labeled him a coward. I've questioned his fidelity, hell, I even considered betraying him and our union. It's truly time to give him a chance after his mountain girlfriend stirred up this hornet's nest. My boss and his expert had some conditions though. The first was easy. My phone's GPS needed to be available to both of them. We set that up right there and then. The second was that I shouldn't acknowledge seeing either of them or Daryl if they were visible. They were clear about the fact that they would be going to be around me for the next 24 hours. They were there to assist me and would help if they could, but they were not going to put themselves in direct danger. If nothing significant was revealed, then we would meet to discuss next steps the next day. The final requirement was tough to accept, but I understood why. I needed to always have a voice recorder on me. Normally, this would never happen, but I understood the seriousness of the situation. I'd promised Ian that I would be at the shop around noon. I'd also given TJ a heads up when I left the city to minimize the initial drama. My plan was simple. After what would probably be some initial emotions between Ian and I, the discussion would be turned to the missing used inventory. I was still clinging onto some faint hope that Ian had some crazy scheme where he was buying and selling useless batches of parts for a profit. That could be the truth, right? It wasn't though. What I got was a very well thought out and complicated farce. Ian greeted me as soon as I pulled up to the shop. We hugged and he whispered into my ear how sorry he was for how he behaved last week, how he loved me, how he'd never betray me. I just kept saying, I know. Over and over. It felt like we were standing there forever, just sharing energy. It was nice to feel. My head took control though and I pulled back. I love this man, but he may be doing things that will hurt me. I looked into his eyes and said, you, me and TJ need to talk a bit. He stared straight back into mine while saying, yes, I understand. His confidence caught me off guard. I was expecting trepidation, maybe even fear. This wasn't that. He held my hand as we walked into the shop. He actually smiled at me, which, if I'm being honest, pissed me off. How could he feel like everything in his life was good enough to smile? Anyways, we walked into the large mechanic bay where all the different toys were, and there was TJ standing beside Leah. They'd clearly been watching us walk in through the bay door window. They looked like that American Gothic picture. Just a little less serious. I wasn't expecting Leah to be there. I felt a rush of enraged energy fill my body. I'm pretty sure that my face turned as red as my hair. I started to aggressively walk straight towards her. I couldn't help myself as I said, WTF are you doing here? Ian didn't let go of my hand and TJ moved between us. Leah just put her head down and said, I'm so sorry for that FN text, Amanda. I really didn't mean anything by it. I was just drunk and acting like a dipshit. What could I do? I guess that there is no Ronda Rousey vs Sansa Stark MMA battle today. I'm pretty sure I would have taken the belt. I hadn't felt that energized since the national finals of the 200M medley. I was full of mad-ass energy, everyone knew it. That's when Ian said, Leah sold the toys you've been looking for in Phoenix this past week. She came back with $120,000. I puked in my mouth a little bit as I looked at TJ and saw his satisfied nod. I wanted to turn towards Ian and slap his face. Like seriously, is this the bullshit you are going to try and sell me? I didn't turn though, so Ian had no clue how angry and betrayed I looked. There was no hiding it. He went on to say, our used inventory was getting a little too high, so I sent Leah to a recreation vehicle show in Phoenix with a few of our key pieces. She wanted to tell you, but I wasn't sure how successful it was going to be, so I asked her to keep it quiet. She felt guilty about that and sent that stupid drunken text. I'm so sorry for how I reacted to your questions. I was caught off guard and reacted like an idiot. All I could think was, wow. The story is so good. It all was tied into a nice tidy bow. If only I hadn't called XYZ. If only Ian hadn't written that FN number on the contract. I would be able to select option 1 without any care for any other choice. I could keep on with my fantastic life with an incredible guy, in this unreal place. Reality is a bitch though, and my mind won't allow for that kind of perception distortion. In the end, truth will out. I had no plan for this sophisticated of a story. I thought I could bust holes in anything, but at that moment, I was baffled. I needed to know what they were truly buying and selling. My hope of Ian just being stupid was out the door. I was struggling with my next step. Do I expose the lie here, with TJ and Leah? Do I wait, and confront Ian alone? Do I walk away, and live to engage this BS another day? This was all running through my head as Carrie's Jaguar pulled up to the shop. She stormed in like every rich bitch you've ever seen on TV. Full of designer clothes, fake tits, and Botox everywhere else. She yelled, who TF called XYZ? It echoed for at least 20 seconds. I'm sure that my jaw was hanging open. I realized that my choices are FD now. Time for some truth. I yanked my hand out of Ian's grasp, turned towards her and yelled back, it was me, and you need to tell me what you've got us into. Right now, bitch. I've had so many messed up moments this past week and a bit, but this wasn't one of them. I knew at that second that Carrie is the seed that spawned this mess. Funny thing about rich people. They only have power if you give it to them. Otherwise, they are just the sum of their personal physical and emotional attributes. They get power from people's desire to be monetarily rewarded by them. Take that away and they are FD. She pulled back, seeing an aggressive, tallish, pissed off redhead charging towards her. She didn't expect it, and I felt inspired. I unleashed a verbal lashing that would have made my Irish grandmother proud. She cowered in the wake of my wrath. I stopped short of slugging her and realized what I was doing was wrong. She gathered herself, stood straight, and admitted to using us all. She rambled about government regulations and the desire to protect rather than share cultural artifacts. She talked about Guatemala, Belize, and Mexico. She raved about the beauty of Mayan culture. She argued that people need to be proud of how beautiful it is and how important it is to share. Her eyes were so intense. She believed every piece of horseshit she was spewing out of her mouth, and when I looked around, yeah, they FN believed her. Everyone has their own moral line in life. Welcome to yet another truth bomb for you as readers. I left at that moment, didn't look back. Ian tried to track me down and was slamming himself on my car door as I drove away. I'm at my mother's now, and yes, the phone calls and texts are annoying AF. How many FN people do I need to deal with now? Ian and Alan being at the front of the line, but FML. How do you measure the love of your life against some desire of some third world country's desire to retain cultural artifacts? Drugs would have been so much easier, but why is that? Is my thought process borderline or even obviously racist? Why do I view the use of banned substances so much worse than selling some ancient civilization's treasure? I have this intense desire to just move back on in my life that was so healthy, successful, and rewarding. Please help me work through this. Amanda's story epilogue: ugly's always good for cheap thrills. Here we are, a month after my world fell apart. So many people being so disappointed in how my story ended. It would have been so much easier to have some obvious immoral acts end my marriage. Better yet, it was some wicked perception issue that I'd walked myself into and figured out just in time. Either end of the spectrum is so fitting for what gets love and likes in the Reddit-verse. What's awesome is that this sub just allows you to throw your story out to the world without worrying about hurting anyone or being hurt in return. I left Ian. That was my moral choice. It was so FN hard to do though. Who did he hurt? I'm sure that there is some bureaucrat sitting at some cubicle in some bland FN building that is apoplectic about Ian, Carrie, and Leah's actions. It's the golden rule that wins though, right? How would I feel if China or Russia were stealing our history? Imagine the Lincoln statue sitting in the middle of the Red Square or Tiananmen. LOL. I totally get anyone that says, who cares? In the grand scheme of life, is this worth such a hullabaloo? I didn't turn anyone into the authorities. Judge me however you wish, the recordings were my property. Jennifer made that clear. I was the client. I expected some sort of moral outrage from Alan and Jennifer. None ever came. Jennifer treated me like the client I am, and Alan looked me in the eye and said, everyone has their personal line. I'm pretty sure that you wouldn't agree with the things I've forgiven and accepted in my life. He did say that if it didn't stop immediately, he would make it his personal mission in life to jail them all. I passed that message on to all of them. I'm pretty sure that TJ didn't care about the unsanctioned artifacts, so I treated him the same as the rest. I told them that everything Carrie admitted to was recorded and it would remain private provided that all activities ceased immediately. I added a warning that they were now under government scrutiny, but that was a lie. I had no clue if they were. I do know that Jennifer is connected enough that someone is probably watching them. I write this because Ian was served divorce papers today. We've talked about it. There was no shocking surprise delivered to the shop. That's not my way. We've met, we've cried, we've laughed, but he understood eventually that making and maintaining a lie is not how any healthy partnership should work. I couldn't trust him again, and he created a professional jeopardy for my career that was unforgivable. He and TJ did recognize my contribution to the shop. They agreed to a payment for my past services that I thought was fair. I used the money to hire them a good bookkeeper for the next 2 years with the salary paid for from a simple trust account that I had set up. I'll be fine, right? Me and my mom against the world? Ian explained his choice as pure greed. The shop was struggling. He was in Mexico meeting with parts suppliers and signing contracts when Carrie showed up to introduce him to another business opportunity. He wasn't sure how the main shop was going to work out, and this was just another revenue stream to him. He didn't understand the issue with funding the purchases and running fake transactions through the shop. He knew he couldn't tell me the truth though. That's why he understands and accepts the divorce. The Saturday mountain biking trips were when they dropped off payment and received product. They rode way above what any layman rider could do. They met with a representative of XYZ at one of the many hunting lodges that Ian and Leah knew about and made their payment. They came down the hill with a fake invoice, a key, and storage locker number. That's why this ridiculous story started. They freaked out that I was keeping up with them and concocted the stupid fall by Leah to make me stop and allow Ian to make the meeting. This event triggered Leah's guilt about deceiving me, and the remaining crap show that is this story was just me and my imagination running free. Ian wants to continue contact and maybe explore reconnecting. I'm not sure. I'm considering a move to LA to join Jennifer's forensic accounting team. She offered and I'm interested in it. I must admit that the discovery of this fraud and working with her was exciting. I just need to temper my emotions a bit before deciding on that big of a move. The truth is that I have a bright future ahead of me. I will always look at my 3 years with Ian as a blessing. I can make the choice to be angry about the situation he put me in, or I can choose to move on. It really is that simple. I wish him the best because I love him and always will. We just have different values and that's okay. I'm glad I found out before we had kids. My love and blessings to you all. Author's note: Amanda will absolutely return. I've grown fond of her fire and ice. I'm working up a modern-day Mrs. Marple type story. My wife owns every publication by Agatha Christie, and I've read most of them. Please let me know if you do or do not think this is worth my time. Feel free to DM me if you don't want to share your thoughts with the world. I'm going to take a break first though. I may post a story that is a bit of folklore next. Not sure, but thank you all so much for your support.